In fact, the difference between the normal infantry and the Navy SEALs is the kind of training that they get, isn't it? You see, whenever we want to accomplish something significant in life, we prepare for it. If you want to win that lucrative business contract, you prepare a presentation. If you want to run a marathon, and I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but if you want to win a spelling bee, you train for it, because we know that very little of value is ever accomplished in this life without training and preparation. And the same is true spiritually. We saw last week that in the book of Acts, the disciples changed the course of history, not because they were nice people doing nice things, but because they were on fire for Jesus Christ. And our challenge here at Elk Grove Baptist Church is to use the time between now and Pastor Leandro arrives to train and prepare ourselves in such a way that by the time he gets us here, our hearts are spiritually on fire and our church is ignited with spiritual power. So that's our topic this morning as we continue our study of the book of Acts, training for our mission. I invite you to follow along. We're going to jump right into the story this morning. There'll be a few verses from the first chapter of Acts, and then about in the middle of the sermon, we're going to look at Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 1. You can follow along on the insert in your bulletin, or it'll be on the screen behind me. Jesus commanded them, "Do not leave Jerusalem. In just a few days, you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit. You'll receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. And you will be my witnesses, telling people about me everywhere, in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." After saying this, he was taken up into a cloud while they were watching, and they could no longer see him. Then the disciples returned to Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, a distance of a half mile, and they all met together and were constantly united in prayer. Now, Luke gives us an abbreviated version of the ascension of Jesus Christ in the first book he wrote, the book about Jesus' life. So let's look at that too in Luke chapter 24, where he says, "Then Jesus led them to Bethany," which is at the Mount of Olives, "and lifting his hands to heaven, he blessed them. And while he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up to heaven. So they worshiped him, and they returned to Jerusalem filled with great joy. And they spent all of their time in the temple praising God." Now, our challenge is the same as their challenge, and that is to use our waiting time to prepare to accomplish our mission as good soldiers, to prepare for the battles that lie ahead. Now, our big picture principle today, the very first thing on your outline there, is to use waiting time as training time. Use waiting time as training time. The disciples had to wait before they could become Jesus' witnesses, and you and I have to wait for Pastor Leandro to arrive. And interestingly, the period of time they had to wait was the same as ours. See, they had to wait between Easter and Pentecost, which is 6 weeks, and we have to wait 6 weeks until his first sermon in September, middle of September. Their waiting time was the same as ours. Their mission was the same as ours. And the purpose of the waiting time, the kind of training, is the same as ours. Jesus said to the disciples, "Wait to be baptized with the Holy Spirit, receive power, and be our witnesses." A lot of active verbs there, isn't there? Why did Jesus tell them to wait instead of launching their mission immediately? It's because Jesus knew that there was important things that they had to do to train, and like soldiers, to be prepared before they could tackle their mission. Jesus wanted them to use waiting time as training time, like he wants us to use waiting time as training time. You need to train to be physically fit and full of energy, and you and I need to train spiritually to be spiritually fit, full of spiritual energy, for our lives to be on fire for Jesus Christ. So the question is, what kind of training